Hello everyone and welcome to another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this battle I'm going to be playing the Dwarves led by the High King Thorgrim. And guys, we're going to be facing off against the Warriors of Chaos. So let's jump right into this game and take a look at the army compositions and we can go from there. So for my front line, I do have a very elite Dawi force. I do have the Beat Gate Guard here who have excellent armor piercing damage, and they also do have armor sundering for those of you guys that haven't seen it. So it gives negative 30 armor to their target, which is actually a little bit decent against like units like Kolek who now have 100 armor as well as regular Dragon Ogre Shaggots. On top of that, on the far side, I do have the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, which are going to be the centerpiece of my army. I definitely like to put them like right in the center because they pretty much never break. I mean, they have 113 leadership when buffed right now, 120 armor, and 83 melee defense. So these guys are just absolute linebackers, and they're going to hold all frickin' day. On the far side, one more group of hammers, so a very elite, expensive front line. But if my opponent doesn't have like really a heavy focus fire, you know, like the Empire would, for example. Against the Empire, I don't like to bring units like this because they're very good at isolating elite units, punishing them with missiles, or, you know, not the hammer of the witches per se, but, you know, just other focus fire methods. Whereas Chaos is one of those factions that, you know, granted they're going to have chariots, maybe a hell cannon, although if they are manually aiming a hell cannon, that could definitely suck pretty bad. But most Chaos players won't bring hell cannons in this matchup. So you're going to be pretty safe bringing elite troops. On the far side, I do have two groups of miners with blasting charges behind both my hammers. So essentially, I wanted my opponent, when he charges in, to take blasting charges from every single angle. So he's going to be taking them from the Ironbreakers, from the miners here as well. And as soon as they get blasted by the miners, they're just going to get hammered by these hammers. That's kind of the ideology and tacticianship of my build here. I do have another group of miners here on the far side, and then I have an extra group of Ironbreakers. So I have a very, very tough army. One of the things that could be a little bit of trouble here would be like chariots or units that can do huge shock damage to my hammers on the flanks, but I'm hoping that my miners, as well as my Ironbreakers and the Dragonback Slayers in the back, can protect those bad boys. I do also have the Grumbling Guard here, the Regiment of Renown of Longbeards with great weapons. These guys are pretty great. I do have a very tight, compact army, and when the fighting starts, they're going to be probably even more bunched up. So having that 18% Vigor Ore is going to be incredibly strong. I do have a Runesmith here, and I decided to kind of kid him down a little bit. So he does have the Rune of Negation, 22% Ward Save here. He has the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and then he also does have the Master Rune of Stromny Redbeard. So that gives 8 melee attack and 4 leadership. So in conjunction with the Great Book of Grudges, that's going to be a lot of melee attack. I mean, these Ironbreakers are rocking 61 right now, which is so heavy duty. So that's pretty much it. Very elite kind of a Dawi strike squad here, and we're going to be facing off against the foul Warriors of Chaos who are lurking in the forest here. They were probably expecting artillery and, you know, guns and things like that, so they decided to deploy over here and play it safe, but little do they know the Dawi are going to be bringing the battle to them. But as far as his troops go, he does actually have a bunch of aspiring champions, which I don't know. I don't think they're the best pick against the Dawi because they do magic damage. Granted, they have good stats themselves, 46 melee attack and 44 weapon strength. You know, they're going to have their damage mitigated by, 25%, but nonetheless, still not terrible. And on top of that, he does have some Chaos Warriors with great weapons, which are a very, very solid pick. He has the Mirror Guard right here, Prince Sigvald's personal bodyguard. They're not bad either. Granted, their AP values are pretty low, 36 weapon strength, only 8 of that being armor piercing, but they're very tanky and can definitely, you know, help to hold your center line. He also does have the Swords of Chaos. So these guys are pretty gangster against the Dwarves. They have heavy armor-piercing attacks, and on top of that, they also have a bonus versus infantry of 18. And pretty much the entire Dawi army is going to be, you know, be infantry, so definitely should be good. He does also have a Chaos Sword on a dragon up here, so the dragon isn't bad against Dwarves. It has, 450 weapon strength, and again, very heavy armor-piercing value, so it can go after your Runesmiths and other high-value targets. And in this build, I don't really have any missiles at all. It's just a very heavy kind of a hammer-themed army. So he's going to be able to fly, you know, overhead without any trouble. He does also have some of the new units here. So he does have a giant here, which is, well, not new, but he has the Weird Spawn. So the Weird Spawn are the new Regiment of Renown of Chaos Spawn, and they have a 150 weapon strength, but they have some really, really good attributes. They have a physical resistance of 30%, so that's going to make them even tankier. And unlike regular Chaos Spawns, who I think have 18 melee defense, these guys have 35, and they have armor sundering attacks. So if he's able to like get onto, you know, one of my hammers and sunder their armor, and then some of these non-AP units can follow up and, you know, really kind of work on those guys, it's going to be a nice little synergy for sure. One of the issues is I don't have missiles. Missiles are, you know, really punishing to Weird Spawn as well as giants. So I'm going to have to just get down and dirty and fight them fisticuffs, which is going to be tough. And on the far side, he does have one group of Marauder Horsemen here who are, good against Gyros. You know, a lot of people, including myself, I like to either bring not a Manticore anymore per se, but I like to bring Marauder Horsemen just as kind of a contingency plan or something to deal with Gyrocopters. Granted, he already had a Chaos Sword on a dragon, so he didn't really need that, but nonetheless, it's not bad. I mean, they have AP missiles. They can, you know, ride around the back. And if I did have like an artillery crew sitting over here in the open field, even though, you know, they are a missile unit, they can still charge in and disrupt your artillery, so it kind of keeps you honest a little bit. So right now we're just kind of posturing up, and I think my opponent's starting to realize that I have an all melee army, so he's going to be squaring up to me here in a moment. I just kind of set up here in the valley, and I'm like, come at me, bro. Come at these blasting charges. should be a good time for all. And yeah, I'm quite excited. I love playing elite Dawi armies. It's been so darn long since I've done this, but when you have High King Thorgrim and then like a Runesmith right here with those melee attack buffs, your troops are so strong. I mean, the melee attack on these Peak Gate Guard is 64. Over here on these hammers, it's only 44 because they're a little bit out of the range of the buff. And for any of you guys that have seen the way these buffs work, so the Great Book of Grudges, it has to be hitting the center mass. So unfortunately, I should have had him positioned right here. It would have been hitting these guys, these guys, these guys, and then these miners over here as well. So a little bit sloppy on my part. But guys, the buff has to reach the center mass or the flag of a unit in the middle to absolutely give them that buff. So a little bit of a noob mistake on my part, guys. But hey, nobody's perfect. So right now, I'll fast forward a little bit as my opponent and I are both posturing. He's going to be coming out of the forest, emerging from the shadows. He does have the weird spawn and the Swords of Chaos. So he actually kind of feigned a charge right here. So he comes in with the Swords of Chaos, and I actually thought he was going to try and clip these miners, which is actually a pretty good idea. So I pull my Runesmith over here. I'm going to be dropping a Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and I also do have the Peak Gate Guard coming in, and I dropped the Rune of Negation here because I figured they might take a bit of a charge, but they don't. My opponent does wisely pull out. Takes a little bit of damage, but nothing he can't recover from. So you can see a lone blasting charge getting in there. Wow, that actually did some okay damage. That single blasting charge, that was pretty awesome. But my opponent's forces are coming in and pretty angry over here, and I definitely got to be ready for this. But guys, blasting charges seem to do like decent against armor. I was like really surprised. So you can see right here, this is probably my favorite part of Dwarf replays, is watching the blasting charges in slow motion. So from the Norgrimling's Ironbreaker, shouldn't they be throwing? Yes, they're going to throw right now. So they waited till absolute melee, or I think those came from some of the miners in the back. So this is probably also one of my new favorite strategies, is layering dwarf forces. So putting your troops in the front, and then the blasting charges is coming in mass, and you can see Sigvald's Mirror Guard are just getting blown into the Shadow Realm. And over here on the far side, these aspiring champions also getting hit with blasting charges. Then the Peak Gate Guard are going to charge in, and that actually did some outstanding damage to those Mirror Guards. That was really good. You can see over here, the hammers are going to charge in against some of these Chaos Warriors, and they're going to massacre these Chaos Warriors. I mean, they have such high melee attack, they have better weapon strength and everything, so this is going to be a very good situation. You can also see these Chaos Warriors, thankfully these guys are a little bit short. So 75, and these Chaos Warriors are pretty much almost offline. I mean, down to like 40%, so just a true testament to the Dawi grit over here. Some of these Grumbling Guard in the back have been engaged on by the Chaos Lord. He does have some Knights and that have engaged over here. I have some Miners and Auxiliary who are going to try and intercept these guys, but he does have the speed and is doing some good kind of flanking. So I pulled my Slayers to help out against these Swords of Chaos, but unfortunately I was a little bit slow, and he was able to just crush my Miners. This is definitely the tougher part of the battlefield. You can see my Dawi brethren over here, the Peak Gate Guard fighting tooth and nail, and they have a really tough fight on their hands here. Their armor is being sundered by the weird spawn. They have a Giant fighting against them, and the Giant is definitely doing some crushing here on some of these Miners. So I basically figured I just need to hold this part of the battlefield. So the Peak Gate Guard, I kind of wish I could have used them elsewhere, but they're probably one of the only units aside from the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers that could hold for so long against all these different monstrosities. So I think, I'm probably going to be able to win everywhere else on the battlefield. You guys saw how impactful that was on the far side, but this area is just looking so bad. My Peak Gate Guard are down to 36 models. Granted, they still have 45 leadership, and these miners have come in here to help out, so they should be A-okay. Over here, you can see these miners have kind of mucked up my opponent, and I'm trying to catch his cav over here, the Swords of Chaos, who have done some great work, already racking up 41 kills. And these Ironbreakers here on the far side, man, they were able to just really punish these aspiring champions and, essentially just hold that side of the battlefield. Granted, he gets a pretty good charge here with the Swords of Chaos and comes in and rear charges these Ironbreakers, but these guys have charge defense against all. Granted, I don't think they were braced or facing them. But look how little damage they took. I mean, God, man, these units are just so durable. Over here, my miners are supporting the main line, and his Lord is starting to take quite a bit of damage. So, the armor piercing of these miners, even though it's not a lot, it definitely adds up over time. And Thorgrim is leading his troops to glorious victory here in the center. You can see the Mirror Guard are indeed shaken, and these Norgrimling's Ironbreakers are essentially unscathed. They're at like 95% HP. They're still throwing blasting charges and just wrecking these guys, and you just see the Mirror Guard falling and dying in fire. And these hammers are now pushing forward and just working on this Chaos Lord, who's starting to get really, really tattered. And these guys hit like trucks. I mean, they have 50 weapon strength, and this guy is taking a lot of damage here. You can see those attacks just taking his HP down, and all these blasting charges coming over here to help out against the weird spawn and some of these other units. So it's definitely very, very helpful. You can see the bounce power is finally starting to shift in my favor. I have lost my Runesmith. He is charging in now with the Marauder Horseman, and I've been really, really desperately chasing with these Dragonback Slayers. Oh yeah, it's time for slow motion karate kicks. So hopefully we get a few of those, but Dragonback Slayers are going to come in and just cut these guys to pieces. Did you guys see that 360 spin right there? For any of you guys that missed that, just rewind like 3 or 4 seconds and watch this guy right here. He does like a 360 spin on his horse, which is pretty great. But the Swords of Chaos are still fighting, but they're kind of being dragged into the mud. I have the Miners fighting them, and the Ironbreakers, you know, though they've taken a little bit of damage, have done a pretty good job of tanking those guys. The Giant's still in okay shape, and the High King Thorgrim was putting up a pretty good fight, but he definitely wants to waddle back to his Dawi friends, you know, kind of help them out. And, you know, the Pete Gate Guard saturated with the Dragonback Slayers are going to be a pretty good force over here. It's going to be very tough for these Weird Spawn to crush. So the Weird Spawn are trying to, you know, crack their way through, but even with their armor sundering, they have 120 armor, hence they're still going to have 90, and that's going to be so darn hard for them to take down. And now that the Dragonback Slayers are getting in there with their anti-large bonus and just working these guys down, it's going to be strong. We do have some Miners, and guys, we also do have 2 Peak Gate Guards. So the Miners come back against these Giant, and I think there's one Peak Gate Guard left with 60 HP, just a true patriot of the Dawi, who was part of this bloodshed over here and was able to kind of help hold back the forces of chaos so his other brethren could thrive there. So that was pretty awesome. But right now, it looks like the Warriors of Chaos are indeed crumbling. The Chaos Horde is routing. The Giant and the Weird Spawn they've definitely had enough of this Dawi beatdown. So man, going to that game, I didn't think it was going to work out very well, but those hammers in the front line just massacred those great weapons. And kind of the staggering of those blasting charges was nice because you get the charges, it knocks over like half the units, and then the hammers get the counter charge, and like only a few of their units are still charging. And it's just like your models get a better concave and just get more contact. It's so powerful. I mean, the Mirror Guard are a pretty powerful unit. Granted, they have low AP. They only got 2 kills against those Ironbreakers, and the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers are pretty much in perfect shape still. So that was really cool. You know, the biggest threats were obviously the Weird Spawn and the Giants, and my opponent had a pretty good decision there going after my Peak Gate Guard with them, because the Peak Gate Guard aren't really designed to fight, you know, big units like that. So that was really well played on his part. Swords of Chaos also got around and did some work, but eventually my Dragonback Slayers were able to catch him. But just a few critiques. The Chaos Sword he's not a bad choice. He can definitely work in this matchup, but the Aspiring Champions, I just don't like them. I don't, you know, see anything wrong with having the Mirror Guard as your centerpiece to keep your line fighting, but the Aspiring Champions, I don't know, they just felt like they just got trashed. Like, they would have 12 models, they'd get blasting charged and then hammered, like, after, like, maybe 7 or 8 seconds of fighting, they're already, like, broken and routed off with their low HP. But granted, they only cost, like, 500, so I don't know. I just feel like they were pretty unimpactful. Like, you could have cut those 3 and gotten a Chariot, and it would have been a lot harder for me, for sure. But yeah, well played to my opponent, PL Raptor 6 SF. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder. And hey, let me know if you guys liked this Elite Dawi build and if you want to see some more of this action. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.